Because he is leaving tomorrow, so I thought we'll give it to him today.
Yeah, they asked me to leave. I will be back before completes.
I am also tired, you are also tired. Okay. I want to, I don't know whether I can make it very light or not. It will not take much time, but I would like to tell some few important
Stories, mathematical stories.
Hello? Yeah. So what I'm going to do is that in this class, so as usual, you are taking omega is a bounded open set in Rn with smooth boundary.
Smooth bound.
So the basic problem in most of this is a very important problem is that you are given a function f on omega. You would like to find question, can you solve this equation Laplacian of u is equal to f in omega with some boundary conditions, let us say with the Dirichlet boundary condition u of x is equal to 0 on boundary of omega. This is the problem I'm interested in solving this. Okay. So before going to solve this problem, look at it. You know that take the ck functions. You take the d alpha is the you take the derivative of the ck functions, ck of omega. This lands where? It lands in k minus mod alpha of omega. So many derivatives it loses. Also, if you take w mp of omega, when I take any u belongs to here, when I differentiate it du by dxj, where does it belong? It belongs to Wm minus 1 p of omega, right? It loses one derivative even here. Therefore, what I want to say is that this problem, Laplacian is what? Laplacian consists of second order derivatives, right? D square by dxi square. Therefore, Laplacian maps from ck to ck minus 2, or maybe if you want to write it as cm to cm minus 2. The mapping. And also Laplacian maps from w, let us say, mp to wm minus 2 p of omega, whatever is here, just not writing it omega. So let us try to formulate this problem in terms of either ck functions or in the subspace. Okay, that is the first. We would like to know that when you want to solve this problem, what is the meaning of a solution? So first question is meaning of a solution. So where you look for the solution? So there are two cases. Case one, as I said, case one, look at, I want to solve this equation. So that means I want u to be at least twice continuously differentiable function. So u must be equal to C2 of omega. And also I want u must be equal to 0 on the boundary of omega. That means it must be continuous up to the boundary. It is a twice differential function in the interior and continuous up to the boundary. I call this be C0 of omega bar, right? It's continuous up to the boundary. Look at the function, and also I want the u must be equal to 0 on the boundary of omega. I denote this by equal to this. That is, it is all continuous functions in omega closure, so that u is equal to 0 on the boundary of omega. This is the notation I am using it. Is it clear? So now I am looking for a solution u in this space. So look at this. This is my space x. So now if x is this, then Laplacian maps from x to where does it maps? It is twice differential functions. When I differentiate it, it is in C0 of omega. Right? Therefore, I am going to define this operator. I call this. Okay. Right. This is what we have. Okay. This is what we have got. So now to begin with, f is actually I am assuming that so this is this means that Laplacian of is equal to this precisely says that if the f is here and if I find a function u here so that Laplacian of is equal to f, then it solves this problem. Okay, this is a setup you are looking at here. Now the question is, naturally you would like to know that whether this problem has a solution or not. Can you solve this problem? This is a question. Okay, question: can you solve this problem in this class C2 of omega intersection C00 of omega closure? Unfortunately, you cannot solve this. That is the whole point. There is a counterexample which says that you can find a continuous function. You can find a continuous function in the dimension n greater than or equal to 2, n is equal to 1. You can just integrate it without any problem. In the dimension n greater than or equal to 2, you can find a continuous function u f so that this problem has no solution at all. In solution means there is no solution in this space x. You cannot find a twice continuously differential function which vanishes on the boundary such that Laplacian of u is equal to f. So there is a problem of solving this. There is a big problem of how to solve this problem. So what you do is that you try to make a weak formulation of this problem. So instead of looking for the solutions this is called a classical solution. Classical solution means you are looking for a solution in C2 functions. Now I would like to enlarge this concept of a solution instead of C2 functions. I look for the sublaw spaces. On the sublaw spaces also I can differentiate it. I can make the difference. So let us formulate this in the sublaw space. So in order to do that, let me make from now onwards I am going to do this. I am not going to take WMP spaces. I am going to define what are known as H spaces, H1 spaces. H1 of omega by definition is equal to W1, 2 of omega. That is, it is a Hilbert space. Okay, what is this? All u belongs to W1 to omega means all u says that u and gradient of u belongs to L2 of omega. This is a space such that norm of u square is equal to integral of u square plus integral of grad u square. And the inner product you have got is the uv is by definition is equal to uv plus integral of grad u dot grad v. So when p is equal to 2, it becomes a Hilbert space. Okay, just let us say. Similarly, H1, I look at H2 of omega. What is H2 of omega? W22 of omega. That is, it is twice differential functions, and the inner product is given by here uv plus integral of grad u dot grad v plus integral second derivative d2u d2. All the second derivatives you just take. So this is the inner product. It becomes a Hilbert space. So now let us formulate this problem in this Hilbert space. So what happens? I am looking at all functions. So u Laplacian maps from H2 omega. Where does it land? It lands in L2 of omega. Okay, Laplacian. Therefore, I am looking at. F is in L2 of omega. I am solving this. I would like to solve this equation. Laplacian is equal to f in omega, and u is equal to 0 on boundary of omega. Now where does u belongs to? My u belongs to H2 of omega. I need at least twice differentiable to make sense. And I want to make that u is equal to 0. So I would like to replace this by this C00 omega closure. I must replace by some other space. That is what is the space I am looking for. I cannot replace this by L2 omega 0. What I mean is all functions which are different square rootable functions vanishing on the boundary, which has no sense. That is measurable functions has no traces, no point values. So this is a junk. This is a junk space. I cannot look at it. So if I want to look at the boundary values, I must define something. Some boundary values must exist. So this is the theorem which is called trace theorem. Trace theorem. Unfortunately, I don't have time to prove this. It is very simple to prove, but it says that now you look at. I know that I am assuming that omega is smooth, boundary of omega is smooth. Therefore, I know that C infinity functions in omega closure contained in H2 omega is a dense subset. We already proved this. Now, for given a function u belongs to C infinity of omega bar, I can define the trace gamma naught of u by definition is equal to u restricted to boundary of omega. A continuous function when I restrict it is still a continuous function on any set. So this restriction makes good sense, right? Is it clear? So now what I want to say is that I complete it, or I know that this is a dense subset given any function f. I approximate that function by this one, and then I will pass through the limit. Now the question is, can you do that? So that means that requires you need some estimates, and you can do this. You can do this in this space. That is what is known as a trace. Trace means the restriction of u on the boundary exists, provided u belongs to h2 omega. Similarly, for u belongs to h1 omega also, the trace exists. But u belongs to L2 omega, the trace does not exist. Okay. So therefore, I am looking for the next simplest one is the h1 of omega, and I require that since the trace exists, I require that, so gamma naught is a trace from h1 omega to some function space on boundary of omega. I am not going to state what it is about. Now I want this is equal to 0, that means this is a linear, continuous linear operator. All I have to do is that look at the kernel of this gamma naught. Kernel of gamma naught is precisely equal to u belongs to h1 omega, so that the u restricted to boundary of omega is equal to 0. Okay. Therefore, that I denote it by h1 0 of omega. So this is equal to h1 0. This is precisely the h1, this is a subspace of h1 such that the trace is 0. Okay. Now, therefore, now I have got it. Now u belongs to h2 omega. I would like to, now for such a function, I would like to know whether given f is in L2, given f is in L2 of omega, does there exist a u belongs to h2 omega intersection h1 0 omega, so that this problem admits a solution. Is it clear? Okay, why I go into why I stated this problem in sublaw space is that L2 sublaw space is that L2 sublaw space has a special properties, that is a Hilbert space. If it is Hilbert space, you know that you have got a Riesz representation theorem. The Riesz representation theorem says that given any continuous linear map on the Hilbert space, you can always find a vector x so that L of v is equal to x dot v. So then let us try to use that theorem to solve this problem. It is just a consequence of the Riesz representation theorem. Okay. So let me state it. This is what is used by Lax and Milgram, and in the PDE literature, this Riesz representation theorem is called the Lax-Milgram lemma. It is nothing but Riesz representation theorem. Okay. So let me state that first, the Riesz representation, and then I will come back to this solution to this Dirichlet problem. So what is the Riesz representation theorem? So the Riesz representation theorem, or it is in the PDE language, it is called Lax-Milgram lemma. Okay. So what are the hypotheses? H is Hilbert space. And L is a linear map from H to R, be a continuous linear map. And then the theorem says that then there exists a unique vector u belongs to H, such that for all v belongs to S, this satisfies the LV, the value is given by the inner product u dot. This is the inner product. This is the Riesz representation theorem. Now, what is the Lax-Milgram? Where does the Lax-Milgram lemma come into picture? Lax-Milgram lemma come into picture in the following thing. Now, I can always change this inner product to some other inner product. Okay. So, what is that inner product? I can choose any inner product. So, let us give the definition of that inner product. Suppose A is a bilinear form to R, a bilinear form. For example, A of uv, this example, the inner product itself is a bilinear form. Inner product itself is linear in each of the variables. Take say any bilinear form having the following properties. One, A is continuous. What is A is continuous? Modulus of A of uv must be less than or equal to some constant types norm of u into norm of v for all u and v. Then you say that A is a continuous bilinear form. Second, A is called symmetric. If A of uv is equal to A of vu. E of BU. Third one is that A is called coercive. Coercive. What is the coerciveness? There exists a constant C positive, say M C1 and C2 positive, such that for all U belongs to H, have the following. AU, it is a positive definite. A is, suppose you are in finite dimensions and take any positive definite matrix A positive, look at AUV is equal to inner product AUV. Just look at this is on Rn. Okay. So this is a bilinear form, continuous bilinear form. I expect that this AUV is greater or equal to some constant times norm of U square. So this is equivalent to saying that the matrix or the linear operator is a positive definite matrix. Okay, then it is called a quasi bilinear form. Okay, suppose on a Hilbert space, A is a quasi bilinear form. Then I can replace this inner product by a new. Then you know that this also defines an inner product. This also defines inner product. So the new inner product, I call this with this one. Say let us take UV is equal to A of UV. This is a new inner product. With respect to this, and I denote by triple norm of U square is equal to AUU. This is just a norm on the Hilbert space. Now look at this Hilbert space with this respect to this norm. Look at this Hilbert space. This is also a Hilbert space. Sorry, this is also inner product space. Because of continuity and coercivity, this is also Hilbert space. It is the same. It is complete. Take any Cauchy sequence here with respect to this norm. Then it is a Cauchy sequence here, therefore it converges in H, therefore it lies in H, therefore it is actually a Hilbert space. It is a complete inner product space. So that means that with respect, therefore I can apply the Riesz representation theorem for this norm. That is given any linear functional L, therefore given any linear functional, continuous linear functional from R to R, there exists a unique U such that A of UV is equal to L of V for all V belongs to H. So this is a Lax-Milgram version of the Riesz representation. It's just what I am doing, just changing the inner product. So what is the relation between the Riesz representation theorem and here? Okay, let me give the Yes. So what I am going to do is I am going to convert this problem into a problem of this kind. That is finding an U, finding an L and a U so that this equality holds. Okay. So this is called the weak formulation. So what you do? I mean, as you have seen in Nandu's talk and my talk, whenever you have something, you have to integrate by parts. And a clever integration of parts, you will get the good result. And all along I have been using just the mean value theorem. Right? Now here I will do one more extra, this integration by parts. So what you do is that you multiply it by any function V here and integrate it. Assume that everything holds, solution exists. So when I integrate it, what I get? I'll just for the sake of this thing, I'll make it minus Laplacian. Okay, you'll see why I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter, minus Laplacian or plus Laplacian, it doesn't matter because change f to minus f. But let me make this minus Laplacian so that I get a positive definite something, I'll tell you. So I'll get integral of omega minus Laplacian of u v. What is this one? This is nothing but integral of omega, that is grad u, integration by parts, minus boundary of omega du by d nu v d sigma. This is just a Stokes theorem, we have it, right? Now observe that I am taking over functions, general sum function. Now I am going to take the v to e in this space. V is in this space. That means v vanishes on the boundary. Therefore, this quantity goes to E0. Therefore, what I get is that integral of omega minus Laplacian of u is equal to grad u dot grad. Is it okay? Now, on the other hand, I know that minus Laplacian of u is equal to f. I mean, I am assuming that u is a solution. Therefore, I will get that this is nothing but the integral of f of p. So, what is the equivalent, not equivalent formulation, what is the formulation we get now is that if u is a solution, if u is a solution for this equation, this one, then for every v, I have got grad u dot grad v is equal to integral of f of p. It is just an integration with parts. But I cannot come back from here to here. I can come back provided you, okay, no, let me not bother. I can come back, I can go forward and come back because u and v are twice differentiable functions, I can do this. So what I do is that I am going to relax my condition. Now this is where the generality comes. In order to make sense here, you need at least twice differentiable. But if you are, in order to make the sense here, you don't need twice differentiable, you need just one differentiable. So I can take this not in H2, I will take this in H1 of 0 of omega. So look at uv belongs to H1 of 0 omega, then this makes sense. Is it okay? Clear? Good. So this is what I call this a weak formulation. What I am going to say, I want to solve this problem. I am not going to solve this problem, but I am going to solve this problem, which is a weaker problem. That is, given f, I am going to find a u, so that this relation holds for every v belongs to H1 0 of omega. But now observe that what happens. I have got u now is in H1 0 of omega. If u is in H2 of omega, for example, it is twice differentiable function, then I can integrate by parts and I claim this one. But a priori I don't know that it is in H2 of omega, right? Therefore, I cannot do the integration by parts formula. I will stop at this stage. What I call is that, I call this is a weak formulation of this problem and it is called the weak solution for this equation. Is it clear? Weak solution of this problem is same thing as, it is a function not in H2, but it is only in H1 0 of omega and it satisfies the integral form of the integral form, not the differential form. Okay. Now the next question is, can you solve this problem? First thing is that, so what are the questions involved here? Questions involved are, one, so I call this a weak formula, existence of a weak solution. Weak solution by definition is that the solution must satisfy this integral identity. Second, if it exists, is it unique? Unique, because you would like to know that the solution must be unique. Third one is if the third one is the regularity. That is it really a solution to the problem? That is, if u is a solution to this problem, can I integrate by parts to get this one? That means, can I say that u is actually in H2 omega? Okay, that is called the regularity result. Can I say that u actually lands in H2 of omega? I know that u is in the existing solution. I assume that the solution exists in H1 omega. Then can you say that u actually lies in H2 of omega? These are the typical problems which you are going to face in elliptic. These are called elliptic problems. In elliptic problems, in most of the elliptic problems, you would like to solve. So I can replace this by minus Laplacian by something like second order equation Aij d square by dxi dxj plus sigma bi d by dxi plus c. I can always replace this by the second order operator, and I am asking the same question. Can I solve this equation by replacing this by this L? Okay. Under the suitable condition Aij called the ellipticity conditions. Ellipticity conditions are that xi I, xi j for any vector xi, I must be able to find that there exists a constant c that this must hold. Here it happens in the Laplace case. Okay. So all the typical problems in elliptic theory is the formulation of this type. Is it clear? So this is the philosophy behind it. So now let me straight this one. I'll write it as grad u, grad v is equal to integral of f of v. I would like to solve this. To find u belongs to h1 0 of omega such that for all v it must satisfy this relation. This is the problem. How are you going to solve this problem? Okay. So, I will rephrase this problem in the language of Hilbert space and Riesz representation. Okay. This is the converting this problem into a Riesz representation theory problem. Okay, let us see. Okay, first one is that, so I am assuming that omega is bounded. Omega is bounded. So, therefore, omega is contained in say say omega is bounded, right? So, it lies in some minus m and plus m. So, omega is contained in x so that there exists a constant minus m less than xn less than m, right, between two parallel planes, because omega is bounded, you can always find it. So, now take any u be a symmetry function with compact support in omega. Take any symmetry function with compact support. I will make a small remark. I would like to say that take symmetry function with compact support omega. This is contained in h1 of 0 of omega, because you know that u all functions here vanishes on the boundary of omega because u has compact support. And if you take the closure, this is a theorem which I am not going to say that. This closure of that is precisely equal to h1. This is again the density theorem. I have to prove this. Okay. So now this is the closure of this is precisely equal to the h1 0 of omega. So now let us therefore, what I do is that I take a function u is in a dense set and I do some integration by parts and then pass through the limit. I will get some inequality, then pass through the limit. That, so what is that? That is what is known as the Poincare inequality, which I am going to do. It is a very simple integration by parts formula. So what you do is take any x, look at the, again integration by parts, x plus t. Okay. Okay. Take any x, this omega, take any y, say any y here. Take any y here. Any y here, it doesn't matter. Look at, I am looking at ux minus uy. So ux is precisely equal to ux minus uy. Why? Ui is equal to 0 because I am taking that u support of u is here. Support of u here, therefore u is equal to 0 here. So this I write it as by mean value theorem 0 to 1 d by dt of u of x plus t into x minus y minus x, y minus x, right? Yes, integration by parts. Sorry, mean value theorem. This is nothing but 0 to 1. What do you get? Grad u of x plus t into y minus x, y minus x dt. Therefore, I will take the square, 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 square. I can dominate this is equal to integral 0 to 1, apply the Hilbert's inequality, grad u of x plus t into x minus y the whole square dt into mod x minus y the whole square. Mod x minus y the whole square. I know that, I don't know why I have to do this. Let me, I don't need this. No, let us see, sorry, I don't want this generality. Yes, I will write that. I want to just, it is enough to look at n, this is x is equal to x prime xn, y is equal to y prime yn, right? Y prime yn. So what I do is that u of x prime xn, sorry, this one I'm not going. This is much simpler way. U of, this is just integration, u of x prime xn, I'm going to write it as minus infinity to xn du by dxn of x prime xn. Is it fine? Just integrating it. U at infinity minus infinity is 0 because u vanishes here. U vanishes, I don't need this. U vanishes here, this is what I get. Is it okay? So therefore, modulus of u of x prime xn whole square. Now this is actually minus infinity, not minus it is minus m. This is minus m, outside this it is 0. It is actually minus m, I can take it, less than or equal to minus m to, no I can take it minus m to plus m, I do this, du by dxn the whole square into some constant depending on m, c of m, by Helder's inequality, dxn. Now integrate with respect to x prime and xn, I will get that u of x prime xn the whole square dx prime dxn for Rn, everything is in Rn, is less than or equal to, I will get this one, I will get minus m to plus m, some constant c times integral over Rn mod du by dxn the whole square dx, which is equal to some constant times integral of grad u the whole square over Rn. But the support u is contained in omega, therefore everything I replace by this by omega. So I get an inequality like this. Okay, this is called the Poincare inequality. Let me write that Poincare inequality in some place. So Poincare inequality says that integral of u square is less than or equal to some constant times grad u square or omega for all u belongs to symmetry function with compact support. Now I can pass through the limit for all u belongs to h10. This is the famous Poincare inequality. It is just an integration by parts. So let us club all the information and try to show that there exists a solution to this problem. That is all. Okay, let us write. So let us know what is my Hilbert space. My Hilbert space H is equal to h10 of omega. My inner product, what is inner product given? Inner product is given by integral of u v plus integral of grad u dot grad v. This is the inner product on the h10 of omega, we know this. Now I am going to define my new bilinear form. I am going to define my bilinear form. U v is precisely this one. I am going to define my new bilinear form u v. I forget this portion. I will take it as grad u dot grad v. So clearly, I want to claim that it satisfies all these properties. Okay. So let us verify this. One. Clearly, AUV is equal to AVU. It is symmetric. It is bilinear. Okay. This is fine. It is symmetric. This is symmetric. Second one. Let us take this one. Modulus of AUV is equal to constant integral over omega grad u dot grad v. Apply the Helder's inequality to the power of half into grad v square to the power of half. That is certainly less than or equal to norm of u into norm of v in H1, in H10 of omega, because I have to add one more extra that is dominated by this. So the second inequality, this inequality is also there, this is fine. Now let us see this third one. How do you prove the third one? Yes? Huh? Exactly. Well, let us use the Poincare inequality to prove the third one. So AEU integral of grad u square or omega. So I will write this as okay. What I want to say is that I split into two parts. Say half of integral omega grad u square plus half of any grad u square. I can split this into two parts. First part I keep it as it is. For the second part I use a Poincare. When I use the Poincare, what I get is that I will get that half of integral grad u square plus 1 by 2c into integral of u square. Now it is minimum of 1 by 2c and half, I call this c, which is greater than or equal to minimum of 1 by 2c half into integral of grad u square plus integral of u square, which is precisely equal to some constant times norm of u square. Can you see that? Okay. So what you get? Therefore, A also satisfies it is a quasi bilinear form. Therefore, I can throw away my inner product. I can throw away my inner product, the original inner product given by this, and I work with this one, A of uv. Okay. So I am looking. So my Hilbert space now is H of 0, 1, and the inner product A of uv is given by integral of grad u dot grad v. This is my new Hilbert space. Hilbert space with new inner product. Okay. Now I am going to define what is my L. So in order to apply the Lax-Milgram lemma, I must get L. What is my L? I want to, this is, if you look at it as a function of, it is a, what is this? This is a bilinear form. Now forget this and look at it, f is fixed. Now look at it as a function of v. This is what? This is a linear map. So that is the linear map I am going to take about. So let L of v is equal to integral of f of v for all v belongs to H10. Then I would like to show that L is it is linear clearly. L is a continuous linear map. Therefore, I will get the L of v is less than integral of mod f square to the power of half integral of mod v square to the power of half. Now I want to show that it is a linear continuous linear means it must be dominated by the norm. But I know I still have now I have got the Poincaré inequality. I use the Poincaré inequality. This is less than or equal to integral of mod f square to the power of half times by Poincaré inequality. You will get that some constant grad v square to the power of half. But you know that the grad v square is the norm in H10 of omega, new norm. Therefore, this is less than to c times integral of mod f square to the power of half into norm of v, the new norm. With respect to, I call this new norm to be equal to this, the new norm. So therefore, I have a Hilbert space, I have an inner product on the Hilbert space. With respect to that, it is a complete, and I have got a continuous linear map. Therefore, by this representation theorem or Lax-Milgram lemma, there exists a unique u belongs to H10 of omega, such that A of uv is equal to L of v for all v belongs to H10. So this is the statement. Now let us expand this. What is this? This is equivalent to saying that integral of grad u dot grad v, this is that is precisely equal to A of uv, which is equal to integral of uv, sorry, integral of f of v, that is precisely L of v for omega for all v belongs to. So weak formulation, it is a triviality. The existence of solution is a triviality. It is nothing but Rees representation here, weak solution. But if you want to solve the strong solution, it is not trivial. Strong solution means either solution is in H2 or C2. Okay, that is not obvious. But existence of a weak solution is clear. Now I want to show that now. Is it unique? Is it unique? I can erase this. Okay, let us see. Suppose, okay, before going next, let us say, suppose u1 and u2 are, let f1 and f2 are two L2 functions in L2 of L2, and u1 and u2 are the corresponding solution. That is, integral of grad u1 dot grad v is equal to integral of f1 of v, integral of grad u2 dot grad v is equal to integral of f2v. Let u1, f1 and f2 are given. Let u1 and u2 be two solutions of this equation. Now subtract one from the other. While what I get is that gradient of u1 minus u2 dot grad v is equal to integral of f1 minus f2 into v. This is true for all v belongs. This is true for all v belongs to H10. In particular, I take v to be equal to u1 minus u2. Take v to be equal to u1 minus u2. Take this one. What happens here? When I take u, this becomes norm of u1 minus u2 the whole square is precisely equal to integral of grad of u1 minus u2 dot gradient of u1 minus u2 by definition. This is nothing but f1 minus f2 into u1 minus u2. Right. Now I apply the Held-Less inequality. I will get a norm of f1 minus f2 in L2 into norm of u1 minus u2 in L2. Right? Held-Less inequality. Now apply the Poincare. By Poincare, I can write a constant times norm of f1 minus f2 into norm of u1 minus u2 by Poincare. This is with respect to the h1 norm. This is L2 norm. Poincare. Now this square, I cancel this square. So what I get is that norm of u1 minus u2 is less equal to some constant times norm of f1 minus f2. Okay. So this is continuous. Now if f1 is equal to f2, automatically u1 is equal to u2, therefore it is unique. So what we have proved? What we have proved? Okay, this is one thing. Okay, is it clear? Okay. Shall I erase this? So what we have proved is that from h10 of omega, okay, I am going to do one more thing. Okay, so there is a unique solution, weak solution is there. Now I want to show that it is actually regular. Okay, so regular, it is actually regular. How do you prove this? I will just give a hint how to do it. Okay, so now here I will take it. I know that norm of u is less than or equal to constant times norm of f by taking f2 is equal to 0. I have this estimate. So now omega is there. So I want to show that u belongs to h2 of omega. This is my aim. I want to show that u belongs to h2 omega. That means what? The second derivative must be, second derivative must exist. Okay. So what is the second derivative? Take the first derivative. Say let us, I want to say the d square u by dx1 square. I want to show that this exists and which is in L2. This is what I wanted to show. So I will use the approximation, finite difference approximation. What is that? Take the, I know that du by dx1 exists, belongs to L2 by the definition because u is in h1. U is in h1, this is a first derivative exists. So this is in L1, this is a function. Now take any point x. Now I will take, what is this one? D square u by dx1 square is precisely equal to x plus say h times e1 minus du by dx of x plus h times x, right? And just take the definition of the derivative divided by h, limit as h tends to 0 is what I get in the classical sense. But I don't know whether this difference quotient exists or not. What I do is that using this identity, this is a step. Using this identity, what we show that, assume that there are no boundaries, etc. We are in the whole space, it is compactly supported. What you get is the following thing. Let us use this. Okay, using this identity, what you can show is that this difference in quotient, this is still is in L2 for a fixed, as a function of x, this is still is in L2. Okay, now we calculate the L2 norm. If you calculate the L2 norm and using this, we can show that integral of, okay, the difference, how do you write it, difference quotient, it is the, okay, let me write, it doesn't matter. I mean, I am just talking loosely, but all those things can be made it rigorous. H times E1 minus du by dx h of x divided by h. Yes, I can show that this is less than or equal to some constant times f inequality. This follows from this inequality. It is some small work. I am not going to work it out. You can show this. Okay. Now what happens? If this is the case, look at this one. This is, I call this VH. VH is equal to du by dx1 of x plus t times E1 minus du by dx of x divided by h. So this is as a, this is a VH, this is equal to L2, That is what we have proved. And this is uniformly bounded in L2. I know that L2 is a reflexive Banach space. Therefore, in a reflexive Banach space, this is where another compactness theorem I am going to use. In a reflexive Banach space, a bounded sequence has a convergence subsequence, weak convergence subsequence, because unit ball is compact by Banach-Alaoglu's theorem. I hope all of you know this. Banach-Alaoglu's theorem says that unit ball is weak star compact because reflexive space this is compact. Therefore, I can extract a convergence subsequence Hn so that this converges to some W which is in L2. What is the meaning of this is that for any f, any G belongs to L2, I mean I am just defining the du by dx1 of x plus hn e1 minus du by dx1 of x divided by hn acting on G, the limit, this is a limit, weak limit, right? As hn tends to 0, this converges to integral of W G. This is the definition. Definition of weak convergence is what? Right? This is the definition. So once we have the weak convergence, first what I proved, using this estimate, I show that the finite difference is uniformly bounded, and by using the reflexivity of the L2 space, I can extract a convergent subsequence in the weak convergence subsequence. So that means that is equivalent saying that this converges to this for every G. Okay. Now what I do is now I will take G to be a smooth function, compactly supported function. C infinity function is compact support. Now take G to be, G is a real, now take the C infinity function as compact support. So now what I do, look at this one, I can transform all these things to on G, right? Change the variable x to x minus h minus e1, etc. I can write this is precisely equal to du by dx1. When I change this, I will get that g of x minus te1 minus g of x, sorry, hn minus e1, hn, just change of variables is equal to integral of w times g. This is what I get. Now, I can use the dominated convergence theorem because this is a smooth function, it is differentiable, bounded, use the Lebesgue dominated convergence, I can pass to the limit here as hn tends to 0. This precisely converges to dg by dx1. Therefore, this converges to du by dx1, this is minus, there is a minus is there, dg by dx1 dx. So now observe this. Now observe what you get, observe. The observation is that, can you guess what is it about? What we got? We got a beautiful identity. For every G which is a C infinity function with compact support, I get that du by dx1 to minus dg by dx1 which is equal to integral of w times g. Now let us go back to the definition of the weak derivative. I say that a function g, function some eta is differentiable, okay, and which is in L2 for any test function dg by dxi. Suppose this is equal to some w times g, then we say that eta is weakly differentiable and w is denoted by, there is a minus sign, w is actually equal to d eta by dx1. Now apply this definition. So that means that I have this formulation, this is equal to eta, this is equal to w. Is it clear? So when I use the definition, what I get? I get that du by dx1 is equal to w. Sorry, d square u by dx1 square is equal to w. Now what is my w? W is an element in L2. Therefore this is an element in L2. So this implies that the second derivative is in L2. I just shown for x1 variable. You do the same with all other x variables. So finally you show that d to u belongs to L2. This is same thing. Already u is in H1. D to u is in L2. Therefore u belongs to H2. So this is the regularity result. One can get it using just this estimate. Okay, just write down and you will get this. Okay, because I want to talk something extra now, the spectral analysis before that. Is it clear? It is a very simple consequence of the Lax-Milgram lemma and this estimate. You will get the regularity result. So as a consequence, let us state the theorem. Theorem says that, look at minus Laplacian. I would like to solve this equation. q is equal to 0 on the boundary of in omega, on boundary of omega. Okay. From this one, so I define the operator T. T maps from H2 of omega intersection S, while T of u is equal to minus Laplacian of u. I am defining my operator T, a linear operator, from H2 omega intersection H10 omega to L2 omega by T of u is equal to minus Laplacian of u. This is a continuous linear operator. Okay, this is a Banach space, this is a Banach space, and it is linear, continuous linear because second derivative of u is dominated by H2 space. Okay. Now, what we have proved? We have proved that this problem, if f is in L2, then there exists a unique function u belongs to H10 omega, which is a weak solution to this problem. And by the regularity, u is actually in H2 omega. Therefore, I get a solution to this problem in H2 of omega. So, let us combine both the things. Okay? By combining this, what happens to this one? This is an isomorphism. It is a bijective map and continuous bijective map. Is it clear? So, now what is the consequence of this? So, I get a continuous, it is an isomorphism between H2 omega intersection H10 omega to L2 omega is an isomorphism. Therefore, I can talk about the inverse map. Okay, I can talk about the inverse map. So, I denote by G to be equal to T inverse. G, which is a mapping from L2 omega to H2 omega intersection H10 omega. Okay, I take our inverse map. What is G? G is precisely equal to minus Laplacian inverse, right? Now, G is, if you have already studied in classical differential equation, G is actually the Green's function. G is called the Green's function. It is precisely the inverse of the Laplace operator, which you can prove it just by the Lax-Milgram lemma. Existence of construction of Green's function is not obvious. You can prove it for the upper space or the balls using the Poisson kernel. But if you want to construct the Green's function for an arbitrary domain, you have to solve a Laplace's equation with right hand side is a Newton's potential, which you don't know. You just assume it and then you write g of xy. Whereas you have solved it using this weak formulation. So you got the g to be the Green's function. Okay. Okay. Now what are the properties it satisfies? Okay. Because the inner product is symmetric, you can easily see that g is actually what I am saying. Okay, before that. So, G is a mapping from L2 omega to H2 omega intersection H10 omega is a continuous map. I know that this map, this set is contained in L2 of omega. Every function here is already contained in L2 omega, right? Now, so therefore, I get a mapping G from L2 omega to L2 omega. So, what is the advantage of this? Advantage is that now I already proved the Rayleigh's lemma. What is the Rayleigh's lemma says that? Rayleigh's lemma says that H1 to L2 is compact, right? So, this is a compact set. This is a compact map. This is compact. This is continuous. Composition of a compact map and a continuous map is compact. Therefore, I get a mapping. I will consider this map from here to here. G is a mapping from L2 omega to L2 omega is compact. And because Laplacian, we can interchange this one, we can also show that G is self-adjoint. So what I get? I get a self-adjoint compact operator on a Hilbert space. Okay, do you know anything about self-adjoint compact operators? Have you studied in your MSc course? Functional analysis? No. Huh? No. You know that there is a very famous theorem of due to Hilbert that if you are given a Hilbert space and a compact self-adjoint operator, it has a spectrum, discrete spectrum, right? So let us use the discrete spectrum. So any compact self-adjoint operator, discrete spectrum. That is, there exists a sequence of eigenvalues lambda n, so that lambda n converges to 0 as n tends to infinity, and I get functions phi n, so that g of phi n is equal to lambda n phi n, and phi n's forms complete orthonormal set. So this is the spectral theorem. So let us use that. What do you get? Let us see the spectral theorem. Let us rephrase it. Okay, so I get that G of phi n is equal to lambda n phi n. What is G? G is equal to minus Laplacian inverse of phi n is equal to lambda n phi n. Right? Or this is equivalent to say, now I will reverse it. Therefore, phi n is equal to lambda n times Laplacian of phi n. Replace phi n. Okay, Laplacian inverse, you take it this side. So this implies that lambda phi n is equal to 1 by lambda n phi n. So this problem, this is Stroum-Liouville problem. You must studied in Stroum-Liouville problem, 2-point boundary value problem in an interval, existence of infinitely many eigenvalues, etc. You must have studied in your MSc, right? Okay, what you do it by series expansion or Legendre. You can construct many. Okay, right? Okay, what I am to say? You got minus d square by dx square. U is equal to. You would like to solve this in the interval 0, 1. With u of 0 is equal to u of 1 is equal to 0. This is a Stroum-Liouville problem, eigenvalue problem. What are all the solutions for this equation? You know that sin n pi x, you call this phi n of x, sin n pi x, you will get this one and lambda n to be equal to n square pi square. This forms a complete orthonormal set for this problem. Okay, this you can do it by hand. But I want to do the same thing. This is precisely the Laplacian in one dimension. I want to do the Laplacian on the higher dimensions and arbitrary domain omega. I cannot write down the eigenfunctions and eigenvalues. Okay, but a general theory. What is very important is that the Lax-Milgrom lemma, it is not difficult. It is just a real representation theorem. And Relic's compactness theorem is also not that difficult. It is just a Arzelà-Ascoli theorem. Combine these two things, you can show that there exists, this eigenvalue problem has a solution. A complete orthonormal set, you can get it. Okay, and this is very, very important in every way. So what I want to illustrate is that the general methods which we have developed, it is purely the measure theoretic methods, nothing more than that, and that can lead to it can lead to solutions of very important problems like eigenvalue problem and etc. Okay, so that is one thing. So I think I don't want to bore you more about it. What I want to say, you can do these things instead of Dirichlet problem. You can do for the Neumann problem, mixed boundary value problems, or higher order elliptic problems, etc. All of them you can try. Most of the equations coming from physics, because they are all coming from the variational principles. You can transform this into a problem of Riesz representation theorem. You can solve it. You can solve this. Not only that, it is existential. It is also computational. So if you solve it, it is okay. Physicists or engineers want to know that. Okay, you get a solution. What is the big point of using what is the big point of knowing the solution? I want the numerical values of the solution. How do you do this? Again, you can do the same thing. You can make the finite dimensional approximations. I don't know what, I don't have time. Called the finite elements method. It is computational. The same thing you can do it. You can compute it. And you can compute the approximate solutions. And it is one of the powerful techniques in elliptic PDE called finite element method. Okay, then what else I wanted to say? Enough. Is it okay? Anyway, thank you for listening to whole set of lectures. No, finished. That is for a different one. Huh? Monday, yeah? Okay. That is different. Oh, this is for the parabolic equations. Okay. Oh, then that should not have time.
No.
Any questions?